I'm Heidi Wadman. I am a research oceanographer with the Engineering Research and Development Center, Coastal and Hydraulics Laboratory. So this is the Savannah district working with the Norfolk district, the Detroit district, and ERDC. We're all here working together. So there's 3 districts in our research group. The cool thing is there are probably thousands of these beds all around the Chesapeake Bay. And so this is actually building on earlier work we did, where we use something called a chirp sub-bottom profiler. So it's like a depth finder on a boat. It sends out a signal, and the time it takes for it to go down and come back up tells you how far down it is. But unlike a depth finder, it's really low frequency and it penetrates down into the seabed. So this is a towfish. It's a chirp sub-bottom profiler. So sub-bottom means that it sees the bottom of the seafloor, or riverbed, or lake bed, or wherever you are, but it also sees all the layers underneath it. So it acts like a combination of a side-scan sonar and a depth finder. So it does 2-way travel time, and it emits an acoustic pulse in this situation, and that acoustic pulse bounces back for the time it takes, tells us how far down that layer was. But it also measures the amplitude of that return. So if I were to take a ball and I were to throw it down on concrete, it would bounce back really hard, give me a big amplitude. If I were to take that same ball, throw it on a bed of mud, it would barely bounce at all. So you get quantitative changes in the amplitude of the return. This is the seafloor. The main thing here is every time there's a different dark line, and it gets light here and it gets dark there, that's telling us there's a change in density. Sand to clay, clay to shell, back to clay, back to sound. So we can do something which is called calculating the reflection coefficient. These are all called reflectors because they're reflecting the sound back. And basically the variation in amplitude in each one of these, I can calculate those. And there's a chart, there's a table you can match it to, say that's probably sand, that's probably gravel. So this is what we're actually looking for. This is a relic, basically a fossilized oyster shell bed. It might be only about 300 or 400 years old, or it could date back to the Pleistocene. So that would be the last time the glaciers were here, when mammoths were running around. But this was all buried when we came over here and basically deforested for agricultural purposes, had sediment all washed into the bay and buried those old oyster beds. So now we're trying to find them because the shell is really valuable for making new oyster bays. So these are shells growing on top of each other, and that's classic oyster behavior. I'm not an oyster expert, I'm a geologist, but what I do know is in their larval form, they're called spat. And so what those little spat do when they're floating around is they look for other oyster reefs, and that's what they attach to. And that's how the reefs keep growing, keep up with changes in water level over time. They don't really like to attach to anything else. So when we're trying to build new oyster reefs, which are great economic value, they're a commercial product, and they make the environment cleaner. They're like this fantastic protein that does both of those things. We need to have this kind of old shell to make new reefs in good areas. So that's our goal here, is to see if there's any of this old shell material that we could then dredge up, clean up, and make new reefs out of.